Young Guns 2 movie review. So I've called this video Young Guns 2 review, but actually I'm going to talk about both of the movies, Young Guns 1, the original Young Guns, and Young Guns 2. I'm not sure actually. I've been living abroad for several years, so I'm a bit out of touch. Do people still remember these movies, or are they completely forgotten nowadays? I get the feeling they're probably completely forgotten. These movies were big when I was a kid. So the first Young Guns came out when I was 10 years old. I wasn't allowed to see it. My parents were a bit restrictive that way. But you know, like it was more kind of aimed at like the teen audience anyways. But I definitely remember like it being a big deal. And then Young Guns 2 came out a couple years later. So these were movies that they were kind of cowboy western movies, but they starred like a bunch of young, good-looking teenage heartthrob actors: Charlie Sheen, Emilio Estevez, Kiefer Sutherland. What's the other guy's name? A bunch of kind of young, good-looking guys. So these movies were quite popular with kind of the young teen audience, and I think if memory served, they even spawned off a bunch of imitators. Like there was, like movies about young mobsters, and all these kind of movies about a group of young people who were involved in some sort of gang or something. So I never really considered these movies had any historical value, which is why I was surprised when I eventually got around to seeing the first one, that it lined up pretty well with the story of Billy the Kid that I knew. Now, I'm not an expert or anything, but I knew a little bit of the story of Billy the Kid just from what I'd picked up in school. And I was watching this movie, and the movie, Emilio Estevez plays Billy the Kid in it. Now, Billy the Kid was part of a gang called the Regulators in the Lincoln County War. And so what the movie has done is just kind of focused on the ensemble cast, making it not so much about Billy the Kid, but about the whole gang he was with. And that way you can get kind of all these famous, young, good-looking actors in it. Now, I'm a little bit nervous about saying, I don't want to be the guy on YouTube who's saying Young Guns is really historically accurate because, it's a Hollywood movie. But I guess the point I'd like to make here is it's just kind of relative to your expectations. Like if you're watching a documentary, you have the expectation that everything is going to be historically accurate. If you're watching this teenage heartthrob movie from like the late 80s, you don't really expect it to be historically accurate, and it's not 100%, but it lines up more than you would think for a movie like this, and especially nowadays with kind of Wikipedia and stuff like that. It's a lot easier to do lazy internet research than it was back in 1988 when this movie came out. So, aside from the obvious Wikipedia webpage, somebody set up a webpage about the historical accuracy of Young Guns movies, which kind of goes through it scene by scene. It's an interesting website. I'll link to it down below. You can look at it for yourself and make your own decision. But after looking at this website, my general impression is that as far as I can figure out, pretty much every event in the first Young Guns movie actually happened. Now, it wasn't always exactly the way it was portrayed in the movie, but every scene at least had some sort of basis in a real-life historical event. And almost all of the characters were historical characters. So, again, it's not the most historically accurate movie in the world, but it's more historically accurate than I guess you would think for a movie like this. Anyways, all this kind of I got interested in these movies again because I was listening to an NPR radio station, a radio program. That's National Public Radio for anyone who's not from the United States. And they were doing a program on the life of Billy the Kid, and it got me interested in Billy the Kid again, and I was kind of going through some of these internet websites and looking up stuff. And then I decided to watch the Young Gun movie again. So I watched the first one, and then I continued on and I watched the second one. And the second one I had not seen before up until this point. So I guess that's why I'm reviewing the second one, because that's the one I hadn't really seen. So the first movie, like I said before, as far as I can figure, every scene had a basis in real life. Young Guns 2, the bulk of the story is historically accurate, but they also add several scenes that are just pure fiction to it. The website I was mentioning before, the one that kind of goes through scene by scene to comment on the historical accuracy, there are a couple scenes in Young Guns 2 where they say something like, in real life, this whole thing did not happen. The screenwriter's imagination got a little carried away here, but after all, it is a movie. Now, most of the added scenes in Young Guns 2, the ones that are not historically accurate, seem to be for the purposes of reuniting the surviving characters from the first movie. So I think in real life, after the events of the first movie, kind of everyone went their separate ways. But it's hard to do a sequel like that, and especially because these movies are kind of famous for its ensemble cast of kind of good-looking young actors. So you have to have an excuse to kind of bring the characters back to the sequel, and that seems to be what most of the added scenes are that are not historically accurate. But if you were to take away all those extra added scenes, just kind of strip those away, I think you'd still be left with a fairly accurate story of Billy the Kid. In fact, a lot of the things that you would assume is just pure Hollywood, or is just kind of too dramatic to be true, actually happened. So Billy the Kid's miraculous escape from the jailhouse in Young Guns 2, that's not Hollywood, that actually happened. Or the mob accidentally shooting Deputy Carlisle and then running off. Again, that's actually based on a real historical event. So there is a lot of actual history in this movie mixed in with the added stuff. On another note, the movie features James Coburn, who's one of my favorite actors. He's in a bit part here, which I have no doubt is a nod to the fact that he played the role of Pat Garrett way back in 1973 in a different Billy the Kid movie. This is the one with Bob Dylan. I haven't actually seen that movie. I'm just familiar with it by reputation. But actually, I probably really should see that movie, shouldn't I? Combine my interests with Bob Dylan, Billy the Kid, and Pat Garrett, James Coburn. Yeah, I'll put that on my list of movies to track down one of these days. Anyways, back to Young Guns 2. Young Guns 1 and 2, really. If you haven't seen these movies yet, or if, they've been completely forgotten about by the next generation, they're worth seeing. And it's fun if your brain is like mine. It's fun to kind of watch these movies and then pause it and go to the internet and see, did that really happen or not? Then go back and watch the movie and then go back to the internet. I don't know, I'm a history geek, so that's how I like to watch these historical movies. Or you could just not worry about the history and enjoy the movie. Either way, fun movies worth checking out.